Hello, this is a further exploration of a process I presented in an earlier video on how to produce gray tones in a Linocut, ABS, or similar print with only one block and only one ink. Uh, Here's a more elaborate project applying that principle. The principle is that two inked surfaces that come in contact when they both carry the same amount of ink will not transfer ink. If one surface has more or less ink, the one with less ink will take ink from the one with more. I use this to selectively remove ink from an inked block. Here is an ABS engraving block, carved, inked, and printed in relief. Note that there is no clear indication of which areas are intended to print as lighter gray tones or shadows. This one is titled Dawn Patrol. I generally want to have a story to go with my characters, and in this case I had a rough notion about wartime. A soldier with enough rank to live off the economy with his mistress, but he still has his duty to do. The title is Dawn Patrol because he has gone off before light. His dress uniform and cap are left behind. She will watch for him from the door, hoping that her next visitor is not his comrade, telling her of his death. But war has left her more practical than romantic, so she has to think of finding a new patron if this one does not return. Note particularly the white coat hanging on the wall. Something interesting is going to happen there. Note too that the window panes and parts of the doorway that are open to bright light outdoors have been cut completely away. With a 1/20th of an inch block, this is about the only way to keep a broad, clean white area intact. Now this is the cleaned mask applied to the inked block. I clean the mask so that they don't accumulate ink that dries and flakes and spoils a subsequent printing. In use, it would have been completely inked on the side that will be in contact with the block. If you don't ink that side, it will have less ink than the inked block, and it will lift ink that you don't want removed. The mask then, cut from Duralar plastic, protects the areas we don't want to change. Note that there are cut white areas not protected by the mask. That doesn't matter, since they don't get inked anyway. The areas where I want black reduced to gray are the wall in the front and side, the edge of the table and its leg that is away from the light source, and the two areas on the front wall that you can see through the holes in the seat back. Here's the block after the clean brayer has been used to remove ink from the unprotected areas. When you get the light at just the right angle, as it is here, you can see where the mask allowed the brayer to lift ink. With experience, you can see these effects with the mask still in place and re-roll any place that needs it. I ink these ABS blocks with a hard brayer to minimize chatter in those shallow white areas. But for removing ink, I use my softest brayer, about a 30 durometer. The softer roller can sink more easily into the open areas of the mask to remove ink. I also keep a 1/2 inch wide brayer handy for troublesome areas, like where the wall shows through the holes in the back of the chair. Now this is the print. I'm reasonably satisfied with the visual logic of the shadows. Light floods into the room from the door and the windows, illuminating the tabletop, the floor, and the stove, and leaving some areas away from the light in black shadow. But enough light reflects around the room to lighten the walls and parts of the table. Now remember the white coat on the wall. After inking, it looked like it would have had this typical choppy chatter so common with ABS plastic. But after the reduction roll, the high spots were reduced to the point where it ended up looking like white fur or some other soft material. I'll remember that and use it on another print someday. This is an easy sort of project, but messy. You have to handle those inked masks to apply them and to remove them. I usually ink them first and set them aside on a tray until I want them. And then I just roll off the ink block when I'm done onto newsprint, but I clean the mask so they don't accumulate ink that flakes off. Next, I did an exercise to see if I could produce a smooth gradation from black down to light gray. Now, I won't take you through everything I tried, but the bottom line is I could not achieve a smooth gradation. Here is a page printed from a block that was totally inked. And then passes made with a clean brayer. If I made many passes, it got somewhat lighter, but it reached a point where it got no lighter any further. After each pass, I cleaned the brayer, rolling it out onto newsprint, and it appears that a certain amount of ink that will cling to the lino and print and then transfer to the brayer will print the light gray. I made several passes, and this is the result. It wasn't making much effort to work evenly across the block. There's a center line that you can kind of see where the ends of the brayer, because this brayer is only half the width of the block. What was useful to know was that you can make many passes with the clean brayer across the openings in the mask, and that all those areas will likely assume the same gray tone. The only real difference is a subtle increase in tone from left to right in this example. And because I only rolled in one direction each time. Obviously, it picked up ink from the beginning of each pass, and that reduced its ability to pick up ink by the end of the pass. If I had alternated directions each time, it would have been a smooth gray from left to right. This is important because when you have smaller areas that are bare through the mask, you often have to make several passes in different directions and sometimes with different size brayers to make the reduction happen inside those small openings and up to all the edges of the openings. I now know that I can work persistently on all those areas until I'm satisfied that they've been reduced and properly treated, and that all of them will be the same tone. In other words, all the shadows or gray tones will be the same gray tone. I did not expect full gradation from a Linocut, but producing predictable and consistent gray tones is useful. As the examples of only one or two passes showed me, you can have a darker gray by limiting the number of brayer passes to that area to less than 3, but you don't get much difference in the grayscales. You can produce a dense black and a couple of grayscales, one darker than the other. If you want the darker one, limit your passes to 2 or 3. If you want the full, even gray, make as many passes as you want to make sure you've treated all those areas. So that's the rule. Fully inked, protected by the matte for black, 2 passes with a clean brayer for a dark gray tone that is still distinctly different from the black, and many passes with a clean brayer to produce a light gray. In each instance, as you see in these images, it will not be a perfectly smooth tone. But as you saw in the Dawn Patrol print, it can be quite a credible effect and produce believable shadows that make visual sense.